Welcome, everybody, to this week's podcast episode for the Financial Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu, and I'm always talking about freedom, time, financial, location, health, freedom. I'm always scouring the globe looking for entrepreneurs, changing the world, making an impact. So today I have a special guest, Nate Riggs, and he dubs himself "The Future Belongs to You." He's with Someday Homes Realty, and today we're gonna talk all about entrepreneurship, starting a business, thriving, and being an industry leader. So I'm really happy to welcome Nate to the show. Welcome.
Awesome. Thank you. Great intro. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I know we had connected through Podmatch, and
That's right.
yeah, it's a great resource. And tell the audience how you got started, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. On Podmatch is a great thing. First, I'll say that it's really allowed, people like you and me to connect here. I mean, it depends, I guess, how far we want to go back or where, which part of the conversation we want to go into as far as the entrepreneurship, as far as the real estate bit. I kind of have always had a passion for it. And I say even though it's not really a family business, it runs in our blood. Growing up, I was born in a small town in Sebastian, Florida, and nobody had a 9 to 5 necessarily. So I think a huge part of who we become later on in life, we're just kind of that culmination of all the influences and decisions we make. And so where I am today, it all started back with me just being influenced by those around me, by the grownups around me, that nobody had a real job, I guess. I spent a lot of time with my grandparents who were retired, of course. So I learned to enjoy that kind of life. Not necessarily, I don't think I ever went to like daycare or preschool, but prior to school, I was with my grandparents. And even then, we owned a flower shop at the time. So I rode around in the delivery van. You know what I mean? I was running out back of, it was like a shopping center, and Clark's Water was right next door. They did, pool maintenance and stuff. So they had all the chemicals and the salt and the chlorine. So I was kind of around almost like dangerous materials for a kid. That's where I was at. Big forklift out back for moving stuff, all kinds of tanks out there because, there's pool heaters and stuff. And then on the other side was kind of like a floor, we had the florist, was a hair salon. So, I was like, they had a bunch of toys in there for the kids. So sometimes I was in there playing. So that's where it all started, I guess, the desire to be like, I enjoy this life of just kind of like freedom. I'm not locked in the classroom and school age, I'm a pretty smart guy, I guess, if we look at, if we weigh it on success, I've done pretty well, made good decisions, but I was never like a 4.0 student. I was like one of those C students, like a C minus student, the one that doesn't do their homework, but then aces the exam. That way you just have a C, right? So like, you're not worried about attendance. You're not worried about the daily stuff. I'll just make sure I do good on the test and we'll average out here. So that's kind of like my youth, right? Growing up.
Yeah, yeah, it's quite interesting. You talk about so many different you could go through different things, it was funny because like all my friends, their parents were entrepreneurs, so they were, really they didn't get this this job and having to commute and all this
Yeah.
and like there's almost limitless and it's quite interesting like how you grow up is like who you're around with and so
That's it.
yeah.
So and I had so I knew that was what I was gonna do, and I knew I was gonna do real estate. I got into that, and there were some influences there. One of my grandfathers had what was called the Sportsman Marina and Lodge. Like, he came back from World War II and built a hotel, and then we had the flower shop, and it was all very real estate based. It's like nobody was playing the stock market, right? Everybody was in like physical, tangible properties and businesses, things you could reach out and touch and see and understand. Man, there were times we did like like we collected coins at the laundromat or the, restock like soda machines, everything. Then my sister had this like enormous paper route, not just like the paper route where you go to people's houses, but like along the beach where, like the old metal like canisters where there's stacks of like, you know what I mean? So she was like renting like a U-Haul van load up for the Sunday paper, and we're just in there. It was crazy. So all of that was like the freedom stuff. So for me, I was like, I'm going to go to school for real estate and marketing. And so right out of high school, that's when I went to study. I started out, I went to San Diego for a semester, and then I realized like out of state tuition was a thing. So I came back. I didn't know, until after you get the bill, it just, no one knew. And so then I was going to UNF, and then I realized, oh, I could get my real estate license, but I could quit college and just get a certificate and basically start doing it. So I did that, and then of course I failed, right? So I failed, and I did end up in a career for about 10 years. So I kind of hung up the entrepreneur thing, hung up the real estate world, but
Mhm.
went and got what I kind of learned was, hey, I'm really young. I'm 21 years old, and that was early or mid 2000s. So you had the recession going, and I was like, if I'm going to be an asset to somebody, I might need to hang this up and learn some valuable life lessons and come back to it later.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting. We'll get into real estate because a lot of people are interested in, especially agent and you have to be smart. You have to hustle and you have to be smart and
Yeah.
you got to go leads, you got to show how homes, you got to close things, sales. So um yeah, and it's like interesting, like the real world and the academic world, you have to like combine them, but you can still succeed in the real world if you have street smarts and
Yes.
make good decisions. So yeah, tell us, so you're a top real estate agent in Jacksonville,
Yeah.
Florida. I think that's where Alex is from with Podmatch, and
Yeah.
uh
Yeah.
I'm sure you know but yeah.
Actually, yes. So, you know what? Believe it or not, Alex and me go way back. We've been friends for a long time. He's one of my best friends, and in the world of business and entrepreneur stuff, you're always kind of leaning on each other. So if we have a new product or a new idea, we get together. We're not, we actually used to live together, Alex and me. So it was like I lived with him for a while, and we met, and it's crazy to see us go from like playing video games and skateboarding to where we are today. And so our conversations have changed, and they're less frequent, but I would say they're definitely more valuable than ever. And so for anybody who's getting into that walk of life, like, you're kind of a product of who you surround yourself with, of who you connect with. And so it's important to find somebody wherever you are that is on that. It takes a lot to step out and to leave your job and to go into that world, where you're kind of on your own. And there's going to be people in that stay in that world of the 9 to 5 that try to keep you there, whether it's out of having a good heart or whether it's out of jealousy. I don't know. It could be one or the other. I think it's both sometimes. But they'll try to keep you there. So yeah, real estate, it keeps us busy. Right now, we've got about 5 properties under contract, like today. 5 right now. We just went over and reviewed another contract, so we should be at 6 or 7 by the end of this week before the other ones start closing. We rotate more. The average agent does 6 to 8 a year, so we stay pretty busy. I say my wife helps me a lot, because once you get to that level, you're not doing it by yourself, right? You've got to have a good support group. So it was something I always wanted to do. So like I said, I started out in real estate and I did 1 or 2 transactions, but I was still living at home with mom or dad, still working at the mall part-time, trying to figure it out. And, there was economic circumstances, but I think regardless, I was someone who, like, I needed to get some life skills in your young 20s. Trying to advise people on how to make decisions with hundreds of thousands of dollars is a little bit challenging. And so that's where I ended up in the Navy, believe it or not. So it's, right. So like, some people go in the military for a number of reasons. Mine was like, I don't know what else I'm going to do, and I want to learn. But you know what? I had a really good job in the Navy, and I learned a lot of lessons. And one thing I will say, that going from a career job like that, where you're always on, you're always working. I think one of the breakdowns that most like young entrepreneurs have, or people stepping into that, is like, once no one is your boss, no one's telling you to wake up at 8 a.m. Nobody's telling you to go to work 5 days a week, or maybe 6 days a week, right? And
Yeah.
so it's very easy to be like, the sun is shining, I'm headed to the beach today, I'm not gonna, check an email, right? So after 10 years in the military, very, very routine, very going, sitting here, making phone calls, writing contracts, that's easy, right?
Yeah.
So So definitely that's a foundation that I've kind of built on. And it's a thing where like I wasn't, I didn't let being a perfectionist hold me back or fall for that. I just was like, I'm just going to start. I'm just going to consistently, the knowledge is gained over time, the experience is gained over time, but you have to just consistently put the work in day after day after day. And that's what kind of leads to the success, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that, these small atomic habits, high impact habits. Uh,
Yes.
yeah, I love that. And entrepreneurship is I kind of relate it with like athletes because you gotta work out, you gotta train, you gotta eat right,
Yeah,
and it's kind
absolutely.
of and yeah, and it's like one measure is like athletic success, the other is like business success, so they kind of go hand in hand. So
Well, and it's not something you can turn off. Like, sometimes I do get tired, you get exhausted, and you can be envious of, the person that just is locked into a contract job again. Like they can shut it, they can leave work and in most cases they shut it off, right? There's no need to be attached to your phone, no need to check your emails at 9 o'clock one last time before you go to bed, right? No need to check your emails at 5 a.m. when you first get up before you start making your calls, right? It's just like you just get in your car and you drive to work. And, I, I'm envious of that sometimes, but I like my lifestyle. So it's the cost of the lifestyle, right? And it is when you're like out running our business, it is your lifestyle in a sense that like, it's not just what I do, but it's who I am. My identity is rooted in it.
yeah. Yeah. And yeah, it's so interesting. And you've talked a lot about, entrepreneurship and success. But then you also you talk about building a thriving family, balancing
Yeah.
family. Speak to that.
Okay, so that's great too. We've got 3 kids. My wife and I have 3 kids, and so that keeps us busy. An 8-year-old daughter, and then 2 boys. They're 3 years old and 2 years old, right? And so they're really close in age. But so it's a full house all the time. And we do like, even today, like my daughter has tennis in like 45 minutes. So I'm working from home. I'm here at my home, office area. But what I'll do is when we're finished the call, I can just walk up. It's close in the neighborhood. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to get to enjoy that. Now, while I'm there, I'll probably put my phone on focus mode and just be like, boom. So while there's a need to check my emails at night before bed, check them first thing in the morning, have my day structured, there's also a need to say, okay, I'm going to shut it off for this hour. Like whatever's going on this contract that has a 7-day time, you know what I mean? I'm up against a 7-day deadline. This 1 hour at my daughter's event once a week, it's not going to kill me, right? And so you kind of have to accept that early on. You feel like you can't, and maybe there is a little bit of paying your dues, right? So you might have to sacrifice some family time or some weekends early on, and then once you gain some success, you're able to put systems in place where you do that. But you should never live in a place of like, I'd rather you live in a place of consistency than desperation. Like I don't ever have to be desperate for business so that my family, goes without time. Because what good is all the like if you're just what good is all the money if you're not spending the time with them, if you're not enjoying your life, right? So there's more to it. So family is definitely super important, and there's a challenge there, with your wife, with like especially if you're working from home. Like today we worked from home, and so she's really good at it though. So she might be better at it than me. Like honestly, where we're like, hey, this is work time. Let's not, I could get distracted or be like, let me get a snack or let me go out in the garage or like, so I usually go into the office, to be honest, just to be more productive. But it's easy. How some families, because they don't see you like locked in at an office, or they know you don't really have a boss, they may be like, hey, we have this appointment coming up. Hey, we have this trip to SeaWorld. Hey, we have this. And all of a sudden you're like, I'm only working 3 days a week here. Like I can't,
Mhm.
I've got to put in at least 5.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's like you have to like stay focused and then it's like you said, time is the most like that's the asset, that's what we all work for is to have more time,
Yeah.
freedom, and we get it backwards where we're just like hustling for the dollar and we forget our
Yeah.
priorities. So
And
um
And that is maybe the difference between because a lot of people say, oh, that person's rich or that person's wealthy. And the way I kind of divine those, like I saw a quote somewhere, so I wish I could take like responsibility for this, but it was like the rich can buy what they want, but the wealthy can do what they want. And I think being wealthy is more than just money in the bank. It's your health and your fitness and your time with your family. And so once you figure out that wealth part, you're able to do what you want. You're able to spend time with the family, go on vacations with your wife or loved one, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah, and in the end, it's all at the end of it. It's like who you spend your time with and your experiences and what you
yeah.
produce in the world. So, um, yeah, great conversation. How did people reach out to you, follow you on social media, contact
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, so the best way is just nateriggsofficial.com. If you go to nateriggsofficial.com, I got a website, and at the top it says social media. You can see everything from blogs to Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, one spot, YouTube. I'm on YouTube a lot. And you can also search for homes and do other things there or contact me.
Yeah.
I think there's even a way to schedule like a 15-minute call with me there. But just nateriggsofficial.com, that's the easiest way for sure.
Yeah. And for the audience out there, let's thank Nate for coming onto the show, really talking about valuing our time and um, putting it where it most counts. And be sure to follow him on all of his social media channels, which will be in the links and show notes. Especially his YouTube channel is also on LinkedIn and Instagram.
Yeah.
And with that, thanks so much for coming onto the show.
Thank you so much.